Mark Andrews finally broke his silence after the Baltimore Ravens' devastating playoff loss to the Buffalo Bills. We talk about what he said, as well as wrapping up John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta's end-of-season press conference. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We are free and available for you, even in off-season mode on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can hit that like and subscribe button, and also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Purple Friday tradition, even in the offseason, it's Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast back with us. And Sam, as we were talking about before we hopped on here, wish it was under better circumstances. Wish we were talking about a Ravens AFC Championship appearance and them going up to Kansas City to play the Chiefs, but they can't get out of their own way against the Bills on Sunday night in the divisional, and that obviously has been identified by everybody as the main reason why they are not playing again this season.
I can't believe we're talking offseason in January. I fully predicted that we'll be talking about the offseason in February after hoisting the third Lombardi trophy. I talked about it all year on my podcast, but not to be. The Ravens continue to get out of their own. They can't get out of their own way. I mean, it's just what it is. And another year where they have put on probably, in my opinion, the best team in the league and faltered short of the postseason once again.
Yeah, and again, this was a team with Lamar Jackson having another likely MVP season here, and regardless if he wins it or not, a historic year for Lamar. Derrick Henry rushes for almost 2,000 yards. The defense becomes the best unit in football over the second half of the season, and we're sitting here. One of those two teams had to lose, and it was the team that did not make mistakes in the Buffalo Bills. And it feels like we have this conversation every single year with this Ravens team. I know, Sam, there's a lot of blame to go around in this one. I personally don't like to put the blame on one person 100%. I just don't think that's fair because there's so many things. It's a team sport, and Lamar said that. You win as a team, you lose as a team. Lamar has the two back-breaking turnovers, and obviously Mark Andrews played a role in this as well. Defense didn't tighten up in the first half, although I give them credit for doing their job in the second half for the most part. There was some interesting play calls from Todd Monken over the course of the game, but I'm not too tightened up about Todd Monken and his play calls. You could point to a play here and a play there that were big, but I thought the coaching, and again, I know people are blaming John Harbaugh for this. I just don't know where you go with that conversation in this particular game. I get not having his guys ready to play in the first half maybe, but the halftime message clearly worked. So there's that conversation. Where are you kind of going with your blame game here? I know that everybody wants to blame the quarterback. Everybody wants to blame the coach, but I really think it's a joint effort between Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, defense, coaching staff. I think a lot of factors played a role.
Yeah, it wasn't just one person. I think if you're blaming John Harbaugh for this loss, then you just don't like John Harbaugh. I think this is a situation where you're probably looking for a reason to blame John Harbaugh, and you're scratching and clawing and trying to find a way. This is not on John Harbaugh. This is on the players. I mean, I've been saying this all week long. This is on the players. Lamar Jackson, once again, two back-breaking turnovers. I give him grace for the interception. I know there's some miscommunication going on there. Still probably shouldn't make that throw if you don't really know for sure. Fine, I'll give that to you. The fumble's inexcusable. I mean, the fumble is inexcusable. It just shifted the momentum. It was already a bad snap to begin with. Just fall down on the ball and live to play another down. You can't force decisions that are going to be costly. I mean, it's all about risk management. If you're in business and you got to mitigate the risks somehow. You just can't turn the football over, and you kind of know how the game is going with the way the Bills are playing the game, loading the box, bringing heavy formations to kind of combat Derrick Henry. You're going to get opportunities through the air. There's no reason to take that chance with fumbling the football. And then the Mark Andrews situation, a lot of people want to blame Mark Andrews for the 2-point conversion drop, but there weren't perfect conditions out there. I mean, we talked about Todd Monken's play calling decision. I think you run the ball there. I think you run the football in that situation. You mitigate the risk. You take away the chance of something awful happening. If you're tossing the football in a 2-point conversion in a play you have to have, or you're out of the playoffs. Do you rather run the football with Derrick Henry, who's averaging 4 yards a carry, you only need 2 yards, or do you risk a missed snap? You miss a fumbling Lamar Jackson, maybe tripping on his own feet, interception, penalty that moves the ball 10 yards back. The chances of you having a penalty doing a short yardage run is way less than if you're trying to pass the football. So, and of course the interception and what happened was the drop pass, but so many things can go wrong in a pass play like that when you have a big offense like you have, and you have a Derrick Henry who's moved the ball pretty well in that game. Just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and see what happens. But again, hindsight's 2020. Of course, Mark Andrews is open. He had a chance to catch it and he didn't. And I guess you can blame him for that if you want to, but for Mark Andrews, I'm more upset about the fumble. The fumble that really, I think they had a chance to take the lead now. If Mark Andrews just sits on that ball, I don't know if he was trying to be Zay Flowers or Tyreek Hill. I mean, we've never seen Mark Andrews do that before. You've seen him sometimes trying to step back a couple inches and make a play here and there. But in the postseason, again, decision-making is crucial. You cannot have those turnovers happen, and it's the difference in the game. It could cost them big time. So, yeah, a lot of blame to go around, but I'm not going to put it on any one person. Definitely not putting it on the coaching staff, though. It's not a coaching error. Their coaches did well. They got their team ready to play. Todd Monken, even though he's hunting for some head coaching positions out there, I think called a decent game. But if you're a player, you got to make the plays. You got to limit the turnovers, and you give yourself a good chance to win. They didn't do that, and now those guys are home.
Yeah, and it's just tough. I mean, on that fumble, we've seen Lamar make plays like that a million times. But again, you mentioned, Sam, the weather conditions were certainly not ideal there. And, it feels like we have, as I mentioned earlier, the same conversation over and over again with this team when it comes to these big moments. It's like they either can't protect the football, they can't force turnovers. And here we are with Mark Andrews obviously being a massive topic of conversation, and he did not speak to the media after the game, did not speak to the media after locker cleanout. I know that whole thing got mixed reviews. Some people were fine with it, other people weren't. He took to Instagram to break his silence on just the entire situation, and I'm going to read off. Side note here, it's a long message, so bear with me as I read through it, but I'm going to read it and then we can react to it here. Mark Andrews says, "It's impossible to adequately express how I feel. I'm absolutely gutted by what happened on Sunday. I'm devastated for my teammates, my coaches, and Ravens fans. I pour every ounce of my being into playing at the highest level possible because I love my team and the game of football like nothing else. That's why it's taken me until now to collect my thoughts and address this publicly. Even though the shock and disappointment are unlike anything I've felt before, I refuse to let this situation define me. I promise that this adversity will only make me stronger and fuel us as we move forward. I thank everyone who has shown me and our team genuine support these past several days. Despite the negativity, I've seen heartfelt love and encouragement, including from those who have generously donated to Breakthrough T1D organization. Even when the moment seems darkest, perspective can reveal that there's still a lot of light in this world. I'm now going to do my part to bounce back and contribute to it. Hashtag God bless." So long message to Mark Andrews, clearly with the message that like, hey, look, this is really tough on me, devastated, gutted, but he's not going to let it define him. I think it's a very strong message. And, I know depending on how you feel about the situation, whether you should have spoken or not, maybe this message means more or less. But I think personally for me, I liked that Mark did this. I liked that he took the time to address everything because he could have easily just not said anything until OTAs or whatever, minicamp, whatever it would be. So he took responsibility and I'm glad he kind of laid it all out there and put his emotions out there for everybody to understand what he's going through.
I've been a proponent I'm always about the players. I mean, going back to when I first started this thing, being a beat writer for the Ravens, I've always been a proponent of the players and their privacy. Mark Andrews doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't owe us an explanation. He doesn't owe us. He owes us 60 minutes of football, win or lose, and that's it. He doesn't owe the media an explanation. We know he's upset. He doesn't owe the fans an explanation. We know he's heartbroken about it. So I wasn't really too focused on him doing so. I know I heard a lot of criticisms about him not owning up to the media. He doesn't owe you guys anything. So, I mean, I am grateful that he went out on Instagram and actually spoke on it because we were wondering how he was feeling. And I love to get perspective about how people's emotions are following those tough moments. And there's a defender guarding Mark Andrews. I'm sure the defender, if Mark Andrews had caught that ball, would feel some type of way, being the reason why he didn't catch it. Of course, all eyes are on Mark Andrews because, one, he's a phenomenal athlete. He doesn't drop passes, and he is still a top 5 tight end in this league. So, having a guy with that status fall short is definitely a product for conversation. But at the end of the day, I mean, he doesn't owe us anything. I don't think that the situation matches the vitriol that we're seeing from fans. I think, of course, drop passes are always bad. Fumbles are always bad. But again, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. He's not the reason why the Ravens lost. He's one of the reasons. He's not the only reason. There are plenty of blame to go around to other players, MVP caliber players. So, I mean, I don't think that Mark Andrews deserves a lot of that criticism. He's owned it, and that's great for him and the fan base and, maybe his mental moving forward. But again, I'm not putting too much on him, but it's definitely pretty nice to see him converse and pretty much use this as fuel for the upcoming season.
Yeah, and again, we're not sitting here making excuses for Mark Andrews like, oh, yeah, that fumble, like, it's okay, and the drop pass, like, it's okay. No, we're not sitting here making excuses for the action that happened on the field. But in terms of the threats that both Andrews and the people close to him have received and all of this other nastiness going on, that's just unacceptable and inexcusable in every sense, every single sense. We know Mark feels bad about it. He clearly states he's gutted by everything that goes on here. And, it's for him to have to go through all of that. You're right. I mean, I think people and me personally, I'm just like, man, hopefully Mark is okay in this situation because, you don't hear from a guy and you don't kind of hear what he's thinking. And that can kind of be worrying in a sense. So again, it's not about what happened on the field here. Like, yes, he made 2 bad plays and they cost the Ravens big time. We're not denying that. But again, it's a matter of Mark just being able to process those emotions in a healthy manner. And it feels like from the message he sent on Instagram, obviously good to know that he's okay. Obviously the emotions he's feeling, they're very natural here. I mean, if that happened to me, Sam, I don't even know what I'd be doing. I'd be crazy devastated and crazy gutted like Mark is. So it's a tough situation all around. Mark clearly played a big role in the Ravens losing this thing, as did other people and other things. But hopefully he can come back with a vengeance next season, but that is assuming he is still on the team. So coming up in the second part of the show, there have been a lot of opinions on Mark Andrews and what the Ravens should do with him this offseason and what his future with the team actually is. We'll talk about that. Wrapping up John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta's end of season press conference and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action, that's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats, like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. So easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. Seriously, I've gotten it paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks it. Plus, weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts add even more value to my lineups. This week, even as a free pick for the NFC Championship, Jaden Daniels only needs 1 passing yard for you to win 1 square. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku talking Ravens football. Unfortunately, in off-season mode, it would have been really nice to have been preparing for the Chiefs right now, but that is not how the cookie crumbled here in Baltimore. Another off-season and plenty of opportunities for the Ravens to upgrade. We'll certainly dive into that as the show goes on. But one thing, Sam, and I mentioned as we head into that first break, the Mark Andrews conversation is not just about what happened on the field in Buffalo. It is also about what his future is with the team. Andrews enters the final year of his contract, as do all the tight ends on the Ravens roster, Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar as well. Andrews is slated to have a $17 million cap hit, 16.9 to be exact, this season, or I guess this upcoming season, next year. The Ravens can save $11 million by cutting him or trading him. That is not a small amount of money. Now, if you were to take that path and, take him off the team, that is a big loss. I've seen some people say, Mark is washed and he's terrible. It was one bad game. Mark is really good. He had a tough start to the season as well. We can't forget about that, but he bounced back in a really nice way. He and Lamar have 7 years of incredible chemistry. That is not easy to replace, although Isaiah and Lamar have their own chemistry, most definitely. What are you thinking here, though, Sam? Do you feel like the Ravens should move on? Should they cut him? Should they trade him? Is this a restructure conversation for you to maybe lower that cap hit a little bit? What's your mindset?
Man, I've been thinking about this for a while. I wish the Ravens had won the championship. It would have made things a lot easier considering how things went down with Mark Andrews. I would hate for him, his last, moment with the Ravens to be that situation in the divisional round. But the money is talking. $17 million is a huge amount of money to give to a tight end on his final year of his deal. I don't think Mark Andrews is back, regardless of what happens after next year. I think just because of the way it's working with Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, the Ravens are really good at drafting tight ends, so it wouldn't be very difficult for them to bring a tight end the caliber of an Isaiah Likely. Well, maybe not that because they got really fortunate with Isaiah Likely where they drafted him, but to get a tight end in the 4th round shouldn't be too difficult for the Ravens. They're really good at doing that. But if I had to put a finger on it, I would be I don't know if he's back next year. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if he's back. If they restructure his contract, then yes, there's a chance. But does Mark Andrews take that restructure? Does Mark Andrews, he's still, who's better than Mark Andrews? We can count on one finger the number of players in the league that are better than Mark Andrews. A case can be made that he's probably the best. Travis Kelce is taking a back seat. He's taking a step back a little bit. I don't know. I just think that if Mark Andrews decides to take the restructuring, similar to what we saw with Ronnie Stanley last year, then yes, I think there's a pathway he remains on the team. But the Ravens are going to have to take a very close eye on Mark Andrews because that is a luxury item to have 2 great tight ends like that. When you can keep Isaiah Likely, remove Mark Andrews, maybe trade him off to a team, get some draft compensation, maybe a player to shore up a need, maybe in the offensive line. So very tough decisions upcoming for the Ravens. Me personally, I don't think you should move him on just because sentimentally, I wait for his final moment to be that drop pass in the divisional round. But I think the cap space is definitely a cause of concern. If you think he's washed, that's nuts. He's not washed. He's still, again, top 3 tight end in this league. That means you can get some compensation for him if you want to. His days in the NFL are done. I would just hate for him to leave in that note. But again, as you mentioned, $17 million is a lot. I think they'd save about $11 million if they got rid of him. So I think the Ravens need to take a close eye on what they do. There is some benefit to having 2 great tight ends, as we've seen this season and in past seasons, but that cap hit is going to get crazy, especially with Tyler Linderbaum, Kyle Hamilton needing to be extended. It might be his last day in Baltimore.
And it is, I agree with you, where Mark is not back after next year, in my opinion. I think that they are going to choose Isaiah Likely. I think they have to choose one or the other. I don't think there is a run because I do think Mark has one more big contract left in him, right?
Oh, yeah.
For context, Mark is going to be 30 years old at the time, like literally right at the time next season starts. 30 years old. I know some people look at 30 and they're like, okay, that's it. That's not, no. 30 is not an age where you just like fall off the football earth. For some players it is, but I think it's like this national, like everybody falls off once they're 30. That's not true at all. Mark has one good contract left in him. It's almost like Roquan and Patrick Queen, where you can't allocate that many resources or that much money at that position or at tight end, right? You can do that at certain positions, corner, wide receiver, edge rusher. Those are premium positions. Tight end is not a premium position. Mark is a premium tight end, and so is Isaiah Likely. Both those guys are tight end ones. They're really, really good. I've kind of landed on restructure, though, with Mark. I could see a way where they move on for more draft capital, but Sam, the Ravens have what, like 11 picks this year? If they can get like a second rounder or a third, I don't even know what would his value be to you? Like, is that a second round value? Would they have any shot at getting a first? I don't think a first is in the conversation, but like, what do you think they get? And then what would you actually trade him for? What's like the cutoff for you to say, yeah, we're not moving him for that low of a pick?
I wouldn't trade him for a third. I think I've seen some people say trade him for a 3rd round pick. No, you get a second, you try for maybe a low first, maybe a player that's, maybe not a star, but, definitely serviceable, good in certain situations. And maybe an interior offensive lineman, maybe a right tackle, somebody like that. But yeah, 3rd round draft pick for a guy like Mark Andrews, you just, at that point, just keep him, try and get another championship in 2025 and do your best to restructure. Hopefully he works with you a little bit, but you don't trade him for less than a 2. He's too valuable. He'll just make any, can you imagine him on the Commanders with J. Daniels?
Wow.
That'd be crazy. Have him with the Houston Texans, have him on the Buffalo Bills. These quarterbacks would die for a tight end who is so good at getting open and zone coverage and being available in the red zone. You can't beat that. But again, the money's too much. But draft wise, give me a second round draft pick, and we might be having a conversation.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in agreement that the number as it is now, that's a lot of money to be heading into the offseason with there. Not that they don't have other money elsewhere they're going to move on from, like a Marcus Williams, for example, or some other players. But you mentioned the offensive line. I kind of want to transition into John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta and what they had to say during their end of season press conference. There was a lot of conversation about the offensive line, a lot of conversation about Roger Rosengarten in particular. One of Baltimore's free agents is Ronnie Stanley, who, as we know, chopped off the last year of his deal, bet on himself a little bit. And I think it worked out for him. He was healthy. That's the number one thing. And I thought he played pretty good football overall. So obviously we know that Roger Rosengarten can play both on the right side and on the left side. So if Ronnie Stanley does leave, depending on who you bring in, you have flexibility because you can put Roger on the left side. And we've seen that it can work if you put him there. Do you feel like Ronnie's a player that you want back in Baltimore, or do you think that they should go young on that offensive line like they've already started to do, kind of lean into that? Obviously, John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta made it clear that going young was the right decision for them, and the results certainly paid off for them. Not early in the year. They had to work through some things, but as the year went on, do you feel like Ronnie is back in a Ravens uniform next year?
No, yeah, Ronnie's gone. Ronnie played himself out of that contract. He's made the Pro Bowl. I mean, Laremy Tunsil will not be playing in the Pro Bowl, so technically he is a Pro Bowl player. He played he played better than a lot of people give him credit for in 2024. The Ravens can't afford him. The Ravens have the luxury of moving Rosengarten to the left side, not having to pay left tackle money to Ronnie Stanley, who's going to demand money elsewhere. I mean, teams are looking for a left tackle, the likeness of a Ronnie Stanley, and it's just way easier to find an offensive tackle either via draft or free agency to bring in and plug in on the right side than to pay Ronnie Stanley money that he's going to. I mean, he deserves it, but I just think, the cap's tight. We're talking about getting rid of Mark Andrews now. Stanley's just, I just very much doubt. And based on the conversation we heard from Eric DeCosta, it kind of solidified my sentiments going into this. Yeah, Stanley's probably gone.
And I think, too, we're kind of in this rotating carousel for the Ravens of money being allocated to premium positions, not assets. Obviously, the Ravens will draft premium positions with those high-level picks, but you have Kyle Hamilton coming up for an extension. Zay Flowers, obviously, I don't think they want to let him leave the building. He's going to demand some money in a couple of years as well. I think there is value in having your two tackles on rookie contracts. And if those guys can become really solid bookends, and Roger Rosengarten well on his way to becoming a star in this league based off of his rookie season, if you can find another guy in this draft, maybe it is a first rounder and you get that fifth year option for a guy. I know that Rosengarten won't have that because he was a second rounder, but I think there is value in having both of your tackles. And that the tackle market over the last few years, by the way, Sam, has been crazy. Offensive line, absolutely wild. I mean, Robert Hunt got $100 million from the Panthers. Damian Lewis, I think, got like 60 or 70. Teams are desperate, like you said, for offensive linemen. And Ronnie Stanley hitting the market. This is not like you're not going to have Ronnie Stanley there for the next 10 years. Obviously, he's not that young. He's kind of coming up on the last few years of his career here. But I do think that as Baltimore has to navigate, obviously Hamilton and Linderbaum will probably reset the markets at their respective positions. You're going to have to figure out what to do with a couple other players as well. Stanley would be great to have back on like a 1-year deal potentially, but even then you're kind of getting interesting with the money because, like you said, the Ravens have some, but can they afford to bring back all these guys and maybe make an upgrade or two? That's where it becomes a little bit dicey. One player, Sam, that not a lot of people expect back as well is Brandon Stephens. And I think Eric DeCosta's comments certainly maybe identified where the Ravens stand on that situation. I talked about it on yesterday's show. I think you could upgrade there, and I feel like Baltimore will explore that avenue.
Yeah, Brandon Stephens is gone too. I think the writing was on the wall for him early. I think the Ravens really wanted to have it work with Brandon Stephens because then the case can be made that they could probably maybe move on from Marlon Humphrey, maybe get some draft compensation for him, maybe get some, compensatory draft picks later on down the line that they're moving. But because of his play and because, how well Marlon Humphrey played this year as opposed to the year prior, I think Marlon Humphrey is a good bet to stay on, and Brandon Stephens will on the greener pastures or not so greener pastures, depending on who you're a fan of. But yeah, Stephens doesn't come back. They need to try and shore up that side of the ball because, teams are picking on Brandon Stephens. I mean, again, we mentioned it all season long. You're not going to throw on Nate Wiggins. You're not going to throw on Humphrey. So the only person left to throw it on is Brandon Stevens. And if you got a guy in Brandon Stevens who doesn't really play the ball very well, you're going to get situations like you saw in the divisional round where Shakir caught that ball in the middle of the field doing a cover two. You can't have it. You need some solid play from that side of the ball because it definitely solidifies your defense, and then you get those turnovers that you're asking for because teams are having to throw it in different directions and not having to pinpoint on one guy. Decisions have to be made. Sometimes the decisions are poor, and that leads to those turnovers. So I think Stevens, he did the best he could. I mean, we asked a lot from him. He moved from running back to safety to corner, then back to safety during the divisional round because of the injury to Ardarius. So I think it's definitely something to be said for his play this year. But yeah, that guy's gone.
I think when you're competing for a championship, you can't have guys getting picked on. It's unfortunate because we saw who Brandon Stevens can be. We saw that he has that in him, but it just didn't work out. And I think the upgrade at that position is definitely necessary. Coming up, though, we'll dive into what the Ravens need to do from here. We'll get into more decisions they have to make. And there's just a confidence level in general of where this team currently stands. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending concerts last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets, obviously for the Ravens and Bills game, which happened. Didn't go great for the Ravens, but I was using the Gametime app with the Gametime Picks. I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDON, NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have or how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when you pull the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, talking Ravens football with you, even in the offseason. We're transitioning to offseason mode here on the show, so crazy to say they're going to be, unless something wild happens, no bonus episodes on the weekends or, back to 5-day-a-week type deal, but that's what it comes down to, although we don't know when something crazy is going to happen. So when that happens, of course, bonus episodes are on the docket. But Sam, we've talked a lot about who's not coming back. Who is coming back? Who is? Because the Ravens, compared to the last couple of seasons, they don't have that long laundry list of really good players that they have to make decisions on. There are obviously a few, but we've talked Ronnie Stanley, we've talked Brandon Stevens. I think the other two that we haven't talked about who are the big ones are Patrick McCary and Patrick Ricard.
Yeah, Patrick Ricard's coming back. I mean, the Ravens have to do their due diligence to get him back. This running game flows through him so much. What the Ravens are able to do on offense is because you got that heavy fullback out there leading the way for Derrick Henry. So there's not a lot of teams in the league that are implementing fullback the way the Ravens are doing it. There may be one or two teams out there who may want to try and get it done. I think of the Eagles maybe with Saquon Barkley perhaps. But yeah, the Ravens have got to do what they have to do to get Patrick Ricard back. Patrick McCary is an interesting case because there is a case that can be made that they can move him to the right tackle spot and he could sit there. I don't know if he'll be doing as well as, Rosengarten did, and that's a very pivotal position to have, but at least to have that ability to have that player that can play any position on the field on the offensive line is very crucial for them. He won't cost them too much, I don't believe, but he's the guy that could probably look elsewhere to see, where the market stands with him and maybe build it up. He didn't play as well this year as in previous seasons, so that may drop his number down a little bit, giving the Ravens a chance to, use him to his full potential with the cap space or what have you. So those are the two main guys. Chris Board, you could try, bring him in. He's the guy that could be looking elsewhere for work, maybe try and get a chance to be a starter somewhere. So you never know. But again, this is the situation as opposed to last year where there's not really a lot of major hitting guys that are at risk of you losing. So do what you got to do. Shore up those two guys, especially Patrick Ricard being the number one guy, and then the chips fall away to made with the other guys. You got an offseason, you got the undrafted free agency. I trust Eric DeCosta to get it done. Your core is still intact, and that gives this team a chance to compete for years to come.
Yeah, and I think with Patrick McCary, in my opinion, I think his value comes mostly as him having the ability to play all 5 positions on the line. And if Baltimore wants to take a first-round tackle, let's say, and kind of move forward with those 2 young bookends and whatever tackle it is in Roger Rosengarten, I think that McCary is a perfect guy for that Super 6 sub-offensive lineman position. But if there's an opportunity for him to maybe start somewhere, obviously, I think he's going to take that. I just don't know if there's going to be an option on Baltimore's line to have him start in 2025. So that's an interesting case. And I think, Sam, we can all agree that we can say goodbye to Ben Cleveland. Based off of the way he was, whether you want to call it treated or handled in Baltimore, I give it a negative chance that Ben Cleveland is back in Baltimore next year.
Poor Ben. Gosh, I was rooting for you, buddy. Go out there and show out and prove John Harbaugh wrong. Get out that doghouse and fight for a spot. Gosh darn it. But yeah, poor Ben. Yeah, he's gone for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I think when the draft capital conversation is interesting, Sam, because I feel like this is the year, especially because, in my opinion, this is like the last year for them to prove it with John Harbaugh. I think if they don't advance to at least the AFC Championship, regardless of what happens, John is gone here. I feel like this is the year where maybe if there's a talent falling to like even the 20s or even mid-teens, late teens, this is the year for the Ravens to be aggressive. You're getting 4 comp picks coming in this year. It's not going to necessarily hinder you from having a massive draft class. Maybe you do move a player for another draft pick. I just don't see how, 11 rookies are going to, 1, even make the team. I feel like you're going to have to make some tough decisions on that. And 2, we saw it. Like the Ravens waited for Kyle Hamilton to drop in their laps. I was sweating the whole time. I was like, please, you have to move. He's not going to be there. And then they read the board and he fell. But for a guy like, for example, Christian Gonzalez, who was expected to be like a top 5 pick in that class, he falls all the way to New England. The Ravens got Zay Flowers and it worked out for him. But like Christian Gonzalez is an absolute star. He fell way past where he was supposed to go. Do you think this is the year for them to get aggressive, move up? They have the 27th pick. Could you see them moving up to like 15 and grabbing somebody who's falling?
Yeah, I certainly can. And I hope they do. I mean, every year I clamor for them to get aggressive in the draft board and go up and get some guy that you really want. Don't just wait and just pray. You got the draft capital, especially this year where we mentioned it, your core solidified. You got a very good nucleus of players. You don't really need to, save up draft capital to fill up your roster. Go out there and get a guy you really want. So I'll be interested to see what the Ravens do in that approach. I know Eric DeCosta's not afraid to trade up or down. I know in the past, Ozzie Newsome, a guy that we know very well, is he doesn't like to trade first-round draft picks. But Eric DeCosta will be aggressive. You mentioned it. The window for the coaching staff is closing. I don't think John Harbaugh is going to be the coach for very much longer. I just don't see it. I see him as more of a family guy. But regardless of the outcome of next year, this could be the last year in the John Harbaugh era, regardless of what happens. You might want to take a flyer, take a shot, and shoot for a guy in the teens in the draft and get your guy, because the chances you find a guy in 27, even though the Ravens have gotten lucky in the past with low-tier first-round draft picks, Lamar Jackson comes to mind, it's going to be very difficult. You need to get a certified stud in the teams to really help inject some youth into this team moving forward. So I fully expect the Ravens to try and trade up. Of course, we don't know how the draft board is going to fall, but if there's a chance to trade up and get one, trade up and get one.
I'm with you. And hey, 27 has been kind to the Ravens in the past. Obviously, you get guys like Rashod Bateman most recently, and they've had a couple other hits as well. But if there's a guy that falls and he can help you win now and be a long-term piece, you have to move up and try to get that guy, especially with all the draft picks that are coming in to you here. But Sam, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on, joining me. I do want to get your opinion on where you are with this team right now. What's your confidence level? Again, as long as you have Lamar, you have a chance. So I want to hear that. And then, of course, obviously tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, as long as you got Lamar, you got a chance. I mean, look at the Buffalo Bills. That team's not built for the AFC Championship. They're in the AFC Championship because they have Josh Allen and they have a good coaching staff. And the Ravens have a good coaching staff, and they have Lamar Jackson, who we are seeing is most likely going to be considered the best quarterback in the league, getting his 3rd MVP award. So as long as you got Lamar Jackson, as long as you have this nucleus of players, you're still going to be in it. You're still going to get the chance to hoist that Lombardi trophy. It's unfortunate that it wasn't this year, but I still believe that window is open as long as number 8 is in the center. As far as where you can find me on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. New episode for my podcast will be dropping today, so go ahead and check it out. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter, where we'll be conversing about the offseason for the Ravens, and go ahead and lament and pour your heart out, and we'll discuss how the Ravens fell short once again in the postseason.
Plenty of conversation to be had, and be sure to go have those conversations with Sam wherever you can find him. The links to all his work in the description down below. Sam, appreciate you as always. Thank you again for hopping on, talking some football with me, and thank you to everybody who tuned in to listen today on Locked On Ravens. No bonus episodes this weekend unless something crazy happens. Maybe Tom Monken gets hired somewhere. Maybe some announcement happens. Who knows? I don't think Monken's going anywhere personally, but we'll be back here on Monday. We'll be breaking down everything from a Ravens perspective. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button on the way out in video form and follow along in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here on Monday in Locked On Ravens.